And these teams are the last 12 standing after 136 began. 8%. Now, while the other teams sit on their couch with their dads, the other 8% who have sacrificed everything to get here are now on the biggest stage of their lives. So I ask you one simple question. Who's ready for some playoff football, fellas?
Let's go.
Very
Yeah.
much ready.
Yeah. Are we ready? Sam Perry, are you
Fired up.
ready?
Ready, baby.
All right. We've waited for this moment. The pods started on August 25th. We were eyeing up this moment. We did think Clemson might be in this thing, but
Oh, Clemson was going all the way.
yeah,
Or someone did
Someone
at
thought
least.
Clemson was going to be so good that they just waltzed to the title.
couldn't have been. I think
They shall go unnamed.
yeah, they shall go unnamed, but
It was me though.
I also had them in my national championship. But so, it's okay though. Um, although who we
No
thought,
losses, just lessons.
yeah, although who we thought might be here may not be here. We have some football games to be played. Let's start with the Friday game, fellas. We've got the Alabama Crimson Tide going to Norman, Oklahoma to play the Oklahoma Sooners. Fellas, this game is a rematch, which we saw in week 12, where Oklahoma got the better of Alabama. And in this game, we kind of started to see Alabama not falling apart per se, but the cracks in the armor. And then we saw Josh Cuevas leave, and then we saw Jan Miller leave in a couple weeks after, and the wheels really started falling apart in the offense. Now, Jan Miller is supposed to be back. How effective? Who knows? Josh Cuevas is supposed to be back. How effective? Who knows? LT Overton is supposed to be back as well, and Parker Brailsford, their center, is also supposed to be playing football. So it seems like they're getting a little bit healthier going into this football game, in which they need it. Like I've said, Jan Miller might be the most important player on this offense just because of the lack of depth that they have. I went back and watched the Oklahoma game, and again, the backs and protection are not very good. That's been a huge problem, and Oklahoma can get after the quarterback. Edge rusher, it's actually R. Mason Thomas. R space Mason Thomas. I've never seen that before. Thought it was a typo, but R. Mason Thomas has 6.5 sacks. Oklahoma might be the best defense in the country, if not. I mean, they're definitely a top 8, top 5 defense in the country, right? So they fly around the football. One thing I just wanted to point out that Oklahoma's top 8 tacklers, 4 from the state of Oklahoma, 4 from the state of Texas. Recruit locally, everybody. Still important in college football, but I digress. Fellas, what do you guys think about? I guess we can talk matchups first. The Oklahoma offense led by John Mateer and the Alabama offense led by Ty Simpson.
Well, I
I
think you would
think,
hope.
yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I think you would. Sorry, I think you would hope in the this 3 week time off for Oklahoma that you get a much healthier and well rested Mateer. I also think that in a lot of Oklahoma's games, they've relied on explosive plays, especially from Satania, like in that LSU game as well as the Tennessee game. And Charlie, I saw that you had this in your notes, but we talked about this after Tennessee, um, and just throughout the season, like the later half of the season, on how much of a weapon Oklahoma's kicker is. And in these likely tight playoff games with pretty solid defenses, you're going to see a lot of special teams being a big factor. So yeah, that's definitely something to look out for. And then, like
Do you
you
want to
kind of
read?
mentioned,
Do you want to just read off? Do you have the stat in front of you?
no, but I can pull it up.
So Tate Sandell, which is Oklahoma's kicker, he's a 95% this year, 23 out of 24. And Connor Talty, Alabama's kicker, who had some questionable body languages in one of the game, which we talked about, he's 65%,
I think
13
it
to
was this
20.
game
Yeah,
Was
it
It
it?
was
was
where he was
it was
Yeah.
screaming at
the
the
other
long
game.
snapper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
redemption spot for him.
That is a redemption spot.
and the long snapper.
Short snapper.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but I think that, and then especially in Oklahoma in the game before, it was one of their worst offensive performances of the year. They had 212 yards of total offense and really, really struggled on third down, but relied on turnovers, special teams to get that win. And then on the Bama side, like you talked about, Charlie, hopefully Jay Miller and Cuevas are healthy and good to go. That should help open up the run game. and kind of keep Oklahoma's defense off balance. Because if you're Bama, I would say you don't go down and score at least some points on your first drive or two, and you let that Oklahoma defense settle in, let the crowd get into the game, then and Simpson starts having the yips again, then you could be in for a long night offensively. But yeah, it's just these little matchups here. Um, but I also think too, like when you're Bama and you've had so much success early in the season, that maybe this 2 weeks off lets the offense find that rhythm again and kind of click like you saw with Ohio State last year. So yeah, super interesting matchup here. It's fun that we get to see a rematch in a game that Bama probably would like to have back. Granted that Oklahoma didn't really play all that well, but still found a way to win.
I just we've been talking about Jam Miller a little bit. I have some stats to back up his importance in being a participant in the Alabama offensive game plan. And Miller's played 9 out of their 13 games. So in those games where Miller is playing, Alabama runs the ball in total in the game on average 11 more times than they do when he's not playing, and for about 35 more yards per game. So it sort of translates right into their average rushing yards per game, but there's an overall increase in the in their ability to stick to the run, even if it's not working that well in games where Miller plays. And it just signals that the coaching staff is a little more confident in handing it off to Miller and staying committed to the run game when he is playing. And I think that's an important piece because the Oklahoma run defense is, I think it's the fifth best run defense in the country. And they held Alabama to it was around their average, like around 80 yards per game, and that's where Oklahoma's been all year. And in that game, Alabama was still able to outgain them. Like Sam was saying, Oklahoma only had 212 yards, and Alabama had 406. I think that Alabama was the better team in that game. They just had three really costly turnovers that directly led to points, and that really killed them in the game. And Charlie mentioned it too. The pressure Oklahoma generated was what led to those turnovers, and that's going to be the biggest hinge thing in this game. I think Alabama, they're going to be able to, if Miller's playing, they're going to be able to run the ball better than they have without him, and they'll stay committed to the rushing attack more. But I think there's been ample evidence throughout the season that they haven't been able to run the ball. And it's probably not going to change that drastically once you get into a playoff scenario. So pass protection is going to be huge. And that was the biggest hinge factor in Alabama losing that first game. So that makes me want to highlight one matchup that I'm really excited for. And I've been talking about this guy a decent amount all year. Alabama's got a true freshman right tackle, Michael Carroll, and he's going to play a lot of snaps against Oklahoma edge Taylor Ween. And Ween, they had this matchup earlier in the season. Ween did a pretty good job against Carroll, generating pressure on most of his pass rushes, or at least affecting Simpson in the pocket. And then people will remember that the strip sack that he had late in the game that basically sealed it for OU. And Carroll's been good and has been progressing all year, and that's going to be a really important matchup to watch. And a lot of the game's going to hinge on those one-on-ones with the stout defensive line and edge rushers that Oklahoma has. If Simpson's able to have time to operate, the OU secondary is havable. We've talked about that earlier in the season. The front seven is elite, but the back end is slightly havable. And if Simpson has time to operate and he has the addition of Miller and Cuevas, then I think that they're going to be in better shape offensively. They're going to be a little more tuned in on protecting the football. And I think that's going to give them an advantage too. So there's a lot of factors that Alabama needs to change from the first game, but those are things that you can hone in on and make sure that you emphasize in your preparation, and you have an extra week leading up to this game that can really make a big difference in this matchup. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that unfolds.
I mean, another interesting aspect, because I agree that Oklahoma can be had in the past, but mostly from their corners, because I think their safeties are really good. So, Dusk, we talk about like in the run game sometimes, like getting the ball to the free hitter. And that's what scheme can do. Scheme can get the ball to the free hitter in the run game, but it's up to your playmakers to break tackles. And uh, the free hitters in the safeties in Oklahoma's defense. Um, their names are Robert Spears Jennings, number 3. He's got 57 tackles in the SEC, and he's top 3 on the team in tackles. And then Peyton Bowers, who had a pick 6 in their first matchup. So really good safety plays. But getting the ball to the free hitters, and Jam Miller and his Josh Cuevas playing, because those two are probably their best tackle breakers and explosive players with the ball in their hands, as well as Jeremy Bernard. But um, another thing I want to talk about is sometimes football can be as simple as who has a better coach, who has a better quarterback. This is where I'm pretty intrigued to see two offenses that have been sputtering but have good staffs. So Ben Arbuckle, the Washington State coach last year that came down to Oklahoma, what does he have, and who do I believe in more? Do I believe in the Ben Arbuckle staff, or do I believe in the Grubb DeBoer staff? To me, I have to say Grubb and DeBoer, and I also have to say I think Simpson has been better this year in terms of just quarterback play and decision making. Now, I do think John Mateer has his moments and he is dynamic, but since the Red River rivalry, it hasn't been the same. And like Sam said, we don't know what his health will be like. Hopefully, this is good for him, but um, I like it. Alabama offense. I believe in them kind of doing what Sark in Texas did to Texas A&M, reviving the run game. I could see Grubb and DeBoer doing something similar, especially if Jam Miller is playing and it has some level of juice. What say you guys? Or nobody could have anything to say. But another thing I
I
want to
was
talk. What were you saying?
no, go ahead.
No, I was going to talk about
I
how.
was I was just gonna say one thing about Mateer and the OU offenses. In that, if you go back to that Alabama game, there were a few plays where I'm not gonna say they were miraculous and they probably shouldn't have happened, but Mateer got them out of a lot of sticky 3rd and long, tough yardage situations where if they don't convert there, they're not gonna get an extra field goal and win that game. So it's gonna come down to because I think similar to Alabama, the Oklahoma offense is what it is at this point, and it hasn't been that impressive for the most part all year. But they have had the explosive play potential, and it's going to come down to if Mateer and Satania and their guys can make those big plays, and when they're in really tough situations, and if they're able to just squeeze out enough offense for them to win. With Alabama, it's different. It's like you're waiting for the cup to overflow and for all of the offensive potential to pour out. With Oklahoma, you don't really have that same feeling or sense that there's meat left on the bone. You can't they kind of are what they are.
Yeah. And they're just like, we're gonna try to play in a game script that is like our defense can win the game.
Mhm.
Although I really like Alabama's defense. Um, specifically Janze Pierre and LT Overton. If Overton goes, I really like both of those guys at edge. I do think like the defense has been, as the offense has waned, the defense has really stepped up to at least get them to this point where it's like, all right, like can the offense answer the bell? And like you said, Duska, dude, at receiver, I like Bernard, I like Williams, I like Isaiah Horton, I like Jam Miller, I like Josh Cuevas. If they all go and if they're all relatively healthy with Ty Simpson and again Jam Miller back in protection, um, I think I trust Bama a little bit more in this spot.
Do we pick winners?
Art, you got
Yeah.
some for us?
I was gonna say back to like the whole, I guess the key in this game, I think to me is gonna be is Oklahoma's offense like going to produce enough positive plays to basically allow their defense to win this game. Because I think their defense like can completely take over again. Remember we talked about this a few weeks ago. Like they were a team I did not want to play in the playoff based on how their defense can just like suffocate you, and like one bad break, one turnover can cause Oklahoma, like it can swing momentum and stuff like that. If Bama allows that to happen in Norman on Friday night, it's probably not going to end well for them. So I think the key is going to be can Oklahoma's offense. But the other thing is Oklahoma's offense has been pretty dreadful most of the year. Like their running game is non-existent. Mateer after the surgery, like y'all mentioned, was not been great.
I mean, both of these teams are in the 100s in rush yards per game. Like these
Like
are these rushing offenses are bad.
So I think the key, like you were saying, I trust Alabama's offense so much more. And I think I would say I trust Oklahoma's defense more than Bama, but the difference isn't as stark as it is from like offensive Bama to offensive Oklahoma.
I like that take.
So I don't know, like Chuck was talking about. I don't believe LT Overton is going to go. He has some illness. I just saw something he was doubtful, but even without him, I think that Bama's gonna find a way to win this game. I think talk about it with Mateer pre and post surgery. I think it's also Mateer pre and post having to play an SEC schedule. Um, and Bama's defense he didn't do great against him the first time. I don't see him, like you were saying, I don't see Oklahoma's offense is turning this around like completely. The way Oklahoma would win this game is their offense doing enough positives to negate the negatives that they will do, like eventually. But I'm going to trust Bama in the spot, so I'm going to pick Bama.
I think we're all leaning Bama, unless Sam.
Yeah, I lean Bama. I think the only another thing too that we haven't necessarily talked about would be just I feel like Norman as well, a fan base starving for the postseason, and especially a home game should be a pretty awesome environment, especially at night. But yeah, I just think the most important part is how Bama's offense looks early on. And I know you're saying, Arch, I also think like how we were saying that both rush offenses aren't good necessarily statistically good. I think it's more important for Bama to be able to run the ball than it is Oklahoma. Just because if that Bama offense has to turn one dimensional, I think that it could be over just because of how elite and game breaking Oklahoma's defense is. That being said, I think that Grubb and DeBoer are going to put together a really good game plan, a really good opening script, and Bama gets it done in a really good game.
Yeah, so I'm picking Bama, but if I was an Oklahoma fan, what I would tell an Oklahoma fan, like why I think they should be super confident is although DeBoer does have a lot of playoff experience, he actually doesn't have more playoff experience than Brent Venables. And I know it hasn't been as a head coach, but Brent Venables is a big game. He's a big game hunter. And I've seen Clemson's defense time and time again come to play under him. So I don't think Oklahoma is going to be like shell shocked or unprepared. I think this is going to be a dogfight game where it's like Ty Simpson, like making a few huge throws. And again, another Oklahoma thing that I just lean Oklahoma is I think the most explosive playmaker in the game plays for Oklahoma with Isaiah Satania. And Isaiah Satania has had numerous cat buster, huge explosive plays to break games open or to seal games or to get them back into games. And I could see that happening yet again. So we'll see kind of what happens with that. But if I was an Oklahoma fan, I would be very confident in the fact that Brent Venables is our coach and Isaiah Satania is the best playmaker in this football game.
He's also gotten DeBoer twice already, and that's not insignificant.
Nope.
And also, I just want to mention I had a take a couple weeks ago about Oklahoma upsetting one of the top four seeds in the playoff, and now I'm flying in the face of that by leaning Alabama in this game. But I think I reserved the right to change my mind until we found out who Oklahoma was going to play. And I think this particular matchup against Alabama might be the worst possible draw they could have had out of all the teams ranked 5 to 12, maybe with the exception of Oregon. But this was one of the tougher games for Oklahoma going into this playoff. And out of all the teams they could have played against, I think Alabama might be the worst matchup for them.
Yeah. I think we did a good job kind of hitting a lot of angles of this game. Art, you got one more thing to say?
Yeah, I was going to say no matter who wins this game, I think I'm going to be picking them against Indiana anyway. I think because like you were talking with
Just
Bama's
means
draw,
more.
with Oklahoma's draw, this draw for Indiana is horrible in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about that when that happens, but we'll see.